Hey everyone. I'm really excited to be here at the RubyHACK. This is actually my first ever conference talk. So I've got shoes off for Dave. And yeah.
I approve of the socks.
I like you. All right, so yeah, let's get into it. What do you do with a drunken sailor or a junior dev? So let's talk a little bit about me. This is my Twitter bio. I'm pretty proud of it. You guys are all invited and welcome to follow me on Twitter. It's mostly baseball on there, but sometimes there's... Get out. I sometimes get into some other things. And then I've got some nice logos up here. These are companies I've worked for. A little bit about me. I also used to be a musician before I was a programmer. So my brain's bigger than everybody else's. Is that what we learned? Way smarter. So yeah, I got my start a few years ago at a company called Mastery Connect, and I've bounced around a whole bunch since then. And I actually no longer do Ruby for a living. I think it's time to confess that. Yeah, I'm an Elixir guy now. You can tell because I...
Your brain's even bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. You know, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a fun talk. Okay, so I put all these logos for these companies up here. I've been really lucky in my career to work at places that had like a good spectrum of experience. Like none of these companies were super heavy on senior developers only. Like we always had people who were newer and people who were around longer. And I really enjoy working with people who are brand new to programming. I think they're really fun. They have a lot of enthusiasm. I like to show people how to do things because it makes me feel like way smarter than them. So we got to have like brand new day one developers around, or else I start to get like really insecure. So just a little bit about me and kind of what I was thinking when I wrote this talk. I have some bad news. This talk is not a talk about pirates. I don't know if you guys remember last year when Ernie gave his skyscraper talk that wasn't about skyscrapers, but actually totally was about skyscrapers. That's not the case here. This is not even a little bit about pirates. And I'm super sorry about that. I tried to make it work, but it wasn't happening. Here's another disclaimer. So I do not believe in clearly defined strata among programmers. I don't think there's like a day when you wake up and are crowned senior developer and or all of a sudden this wizard and can do stuff. And you know, same thing with juniors and mids. Like experience is a spectrum, and we all have things to learn from each other. And I think it's really toxic to start like categorizing people, and that only benefits HR, and it only goes to like suppress our own wages and make our lives harder. So when I use those terms in the rest of this talk, I'm really just speaking about like individual roles and how they relate to each other. So know that I don't believe in that because it's garbage. So speaking of things that we all have in common, everybody was a junior developer at one time. Like everybody who's ever had a programming job had their first day at their first job when they didn't know how to do anything and needed help setting up their computer and getting the application running and all that stuff. And I think that it's really important that as we get years of experience and get far down the road that we remember what that was like and try to make it easier on those who are coming behind us, because like chances are if you've stuck around in this field for a very long time, you had people that helped you out, and you should pay that forward because that's the right thing to do. Yeah, we all had to start somewhere. So as a company, our objective when we hire a junior developer is we want to help them advance from their current level of proficiency to beyond, where they're just like all the other members of our team, and we don't have to call them a junior dev anymore. That's one of the reasons I think junior dev is a toxic title. Like we're all just engineers. We're all trying to solve problems. We're all trying to, ship code and build product, and to like categorize people and try to make them, think that they're any less capable or less worthy than anybody else on our team is a really toxic attitude. So You'll notice that this objective also applies when we hire a mid-level developer or senior level developer. We always want to take people from where they're at, help them get better. That's the path. So we're going to talk about some ways that companies can do that. And this is like what it looks like as junior developers progress. You'll start to, oh, why are my slides off to the side? You see, okay. Just the TV. You'll notice that like as your developers start to level up, you start talking to them less about things like syntax. You'll start to notice you're more talking towards design patterns. That's the goal. You're trying to get them down this path. You bring somebody in and they might not know how things work, or they might have just memorized the pattern. You want to help them understand like why. You'll also start to notice that you focus more on the trade-offs of the code and not just like making sure that all the boxes on the spec doc are checked off and the requirements are met. They can start to think at a higher level. And it's really important that as new members join your team, you start to talk to them about that kind of thing and push them in that direction. You'll also notice that even if you have somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience outside of your organization, the longer you're with them and the longer you invest in them, they start to learn a lot about your application. And even as you hire people that have years and years of experience, sometimes your junior developers are just as capable at working within the scope of your own stack just because they know it well. That's pretty cool when that happens. And you'll notice that they can start to gain more autonomy. So this is our path for our junior developers. We want to bring them in, whatever level they're at, and start to work toward like these 4 main objectives. Like there's this big roadblock to that. Just like show of hands, who's ever heard a company say that we only hire senior developers? Yeah, that's a stupid thing to say. And when I have this up here, I don't mean that like we only hire senior developers right now is a different statement than we only hire senior developers. Like you obviously have to maintain a balance in your team of experience, and that's going to vary for every organization. But people who just like blanket say we only hire senior developers, what they're really saying is that they prefer to outsource the training of their employees to other companies. Like, go get trained somewhere else and then you can come work here. That's a stupid thing to say. We have no desire to contribute to the community. Like, we just want to take off the top and not like replant anyone. This is like slash and burn agriculture. It's not good. We prefer to have long drawn out arguments about semantics and architecture over actually shipping code. I mean, I guess if you just want to sit around a whiteboard all day, like bringing in a bunch of senior devs is probably the way to get there. If you want to tell jokes about Murder, She Wrote, it's probably going to go over the heads of most of the younger people in the room. So what I think people are really saying when they say we only hire senior devs is that training is hard and we don't know how to do it well. And that's a super true statement. It's really hard to bring somebody on, and if you don't have a process in place, if you haven't invested the time to like establish a culture within your organization where you can support a new member and when you can give them the tools they need to be successful, if you don't have any of that in place and you bring somebody in, it's going to be a disaster. But lucky for all of you, I got all the secret keys to success, and we're going to talk about those. So the important thing is that you want to have a plan in place before you post a junior dev job. Show of hands, has anybody ever posted a junior dev job on the internet? Does this look familiar? So while there's no shortage of opportunity on the Wasatch Front for people with a couple of years of software development experience, there's also like half dozen boot camps and a couple universities that are just pumping out new graduates on a pretty regular basis. So there's a lot of more people looking for their first job than there are people looking for their 5th job, And if you don't have a plan in place on how to support those people, it might get pretty overwhelming. You look at these resumes and, if they're anything like CC's and they have other experience like singing operas and stuff, it might be really hard and you get overwhelmed and you're not able to really do it. So a lot of people give up, which I think is super sad because I really love to work with new developers. I think, like I mentioned, it makes me feel really smart to have them around, and that's really good for my ego. Number two, like, they're just fun to work with. It's fun to have a brand new person who's like eager and excited and doesn't have like years of pent up aggression and, you know, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's like senior developers have opinions and they're grumpy. Also, junior developers tend to be pretty cheap. So it should be a pretty easy sell to the boss if you're like, hey, I need some help on my team. Oh, we can't afford it. Oh, but this guy costs like half as much as all these other guys. You know, you might be able to sell that pretty easy. This, I think, the biggest benefit of having junior developers on your team. So unless we're like trying to land rocket ships on boats in the middle of the ocean or programming pacemakers or something, like chances are pretty good we've got issues in our bug trackers right now that don't take 15 years of experience to kill, right? Like every software project I've ever sat down on had like a laundry list of stuff that somebody wanted to get accomplished that nobody wanted to take the time to do. That really wasn't that hard. I mean, it would have been impossible for the muggles and the marketing team to go over there and, you know, get this done. But like, you know, anybody with any level of training could like accomplish most of these tasks pretty easily. And if you've got your senior developers sitting around all day, you know, pushing pixels or, you know, taking off these 1-point tickets, like that's not the most efficient use of their time, and it's not what they want to be doing. Like most of the best developers that I've ever worked with wanted to solve challenging problems and like do hard things. And as you bring in other people of like to pull off that low-hanging fruit, your organization continues to move forward and it increases your pace. But then also, your senior developers have time to do senior developer stuff. And like, I don't know what it is that senior developers do, but all the hard stuff. It's another terrific benefit for your organization. You've got people that aren't quite senior developers but are still pretty good and have some experience. As you bring in people like right below them, gives them the opportunity to teach. Teaching is the single greatest way to learn a subject well and thoroughly. Like if you have to explain to somebody else, that's going to deepen your own understanding and it's going to make you better at your craft. Having junior developers around will make every other developer in your organization better. If you want to fight about that, get at my Twitter. And here's like another really cool benefit that I think has just kind of happened. Over the last couple of years, we've had this boot camp thing has popped up, and it's really had a great impact on like the diversity of our teams. We've got people with different backgrounds, and you know, we've got programmers in the market that are not the typical CS background, building gaming PCs in their basement, like type of like what you would think is a stereotypical developer. We've got musicians and artists and other backgrounds that are coming in, and then we can have underrepresented groups and minorities and women in tech, and that's been a big push that some of these alternative education type programs are pushing, and that's wonderful for our organization, because if you have 5 people in a room and they're trying to solve a problem and they all have the exact same background, they're not going to come at it as efficiently as people with varying backgrounds. It's good for the organization, it's good for the community as a whole, and it's something that I really believe is important. So those are all the wonderful benefits for your companies for hiring junior developers. And the most common question that I hear when we talk about this is like, what should you look for in a good junior developer? What makes a good junior developer? Of the 12,000 emails you get, how do you decide who to hire? And the number one thing you need to look for is somebody that doesn't have a lot of ego. So sometimes I go over to some of the boot camp schools and like talk to them about why I'm so great. And one thing that like invariably gets brought up is like what they should do on their first day or anything. And like the attitude that I want every junior developer to have when they join my team is that like I just need them to understand that your first day on your first job, like you walk into that building and every single person there has more experience than you and probably knows more than you, because they're like day 1 plus whatever, So if you go in there like with your dukes up trying to fight about every decision, like that's probably not a good idea. You want somebody who's teachable. What I don't mean by this is you don't want somebody who's a pushover. So like somebody that's got like enough spine to like stick up for themselves is really important. And the phrase that I like to sum it up is strong opinions loosely held. Like somebody who knows that there is a right answer and is hungry to get at that right answer. And that feeds into the next one. Hunger is really important for a junior developer. You want somebody who just wants to learn, is not satisfied being the dumbest one in the room or the least experienced one in the room. You want somebody who wants to, get after it and progress. If you combine those two things, and then you find it's honesty. What I mean by this is like, a lot of times when you're new, it's something you won't know how to do it. And like, I think culturally there's like this expectation that you should be insecure about that or like embarrassed or try to hide it. People who have the courage to be honest when they don't know something and like will seek out the answer, that is that's what you want out of your junior developers. Like, I don't know how to do this, but let's figure it out. And not like, I don't know how to do this, so let's cover it up, or let me try to BS my way around this situation, try to cover and hide the fact that I don't know what I'm doing. Like, those are two polar opposite attitudes, and you gotta have the first one. And then if you can get number 4 as a bonus, somebody that's like enthusiasm and fun to be around, then like you got a slam dunk junior dev right here. That's what you're looking for. So step number 1 as a company, when you bring in a junior developer, they gotta have a mentor. This is the bare minimum. If you wanna set them up for success, they need to have a person who they can go to help them out when they're stuck. Ideally, that person would know that it's their job to help out this new junior developer. Ideally. Let's look at some great mentors here. I'm a Boston guy. Good Will Hunting's important to me.
I see how those last 2 slides go together.
Yeah, it's important. Got to have a good mentor. So the role of mentor, number 1, your sailor's going to get stuck. Somebody's going to need to help him get unstuck. That just happens, right? Like, you don't want somebody spinning their wheels for hours at a time, banging their head against a keyboard, trying to do the old, like, let's just see if I keep adding semicolons and this thing works. JavaScript developers. Somebody needs to be able to help them out. And where's Cece? Is she still here? Navalink guys? Man, she was talking about how when she was first starting out, she memorized all these patterns but didn't know what was really going on under the hood. And that like really resonated with me because same deal. I'm great at memorizing patterns too. Sometimes I knew how to do things that I didn't know why I was doing them. And this is like one of the best opportunities to have a mentor. Is like, let's talk about why we don't use N+1 queries in our things. And let's talk about why we don't like, do raw SQL in our views. Like, let's talk about why. And as you go through some of those things, it's like a really good opportunity to just round out their learning. And it stops being about like, because it's really easy to Google like, how do I do this thing in Rails? And there's a gem for it. You install it and you're off to the races. But sometimes you need to know why. Humility is a big thing, I think. It's really nice as a junior developer when you have somebody sitting next to you that knows way more than you, so that you don't ever start to think that you're the smartest person in the room. And likewise, it's also really nice to have somebody sitting next to you who knows way more than you because it gives you something to aspire to. Mentors fill all those roles. And this is like bare minimum if you're going to hire a junior developer. You're going to ask a lot of it. The mentor, and they need to be bought in. So this is another one. Curate tasks with care. What do I mean by that? When you're assigning work to your junior developer, it might be tempting to throw out something like this. Install PowerPoint for the sales bros. They probably need PowerPoint or whatever, but I've heard like horror stories of people being brought into organizations and like just getting like 1-point tickets thrown at them all the time and not really giving them any challenging work to do. And I think that that's really doing your organization a disservice. It's doing your junior devs a disservice. You want to make sure that you're giving them work to do that's going to stretch them. And this is another part where having your mentor really plugged into the process helps out because as they're going through the process of training these junior developers, they start to get a pretty good barometer for where their skills are at. They can start to kind of cherry pick tickets that are going to just stretch them and help them to grow. It's really great and important. And we talked about this a minute ago, but I think one of the biggest and fastest ways a junior developer can add value to your team is by taking tasks off the plate of your more experienced engineers. And I think there are a couple junior devs in the room, like, if you want to make yourself valuable to an organization, find the work that nobody wants to do and just volunteer to own it. And then they'll never be able to get rid of you. We talked a little bit about this a minute ago too, but here's some ways to like add value that might be outside of the roadmap. And this just kind of follows up with finding things to do that's going to stretch you. Oh, whoa, that jumped a bunch of slides. Spoilers. Okay, every organization I've been a part of had some product manager somewhere, some business guy that wanted like reports pulled and sent to him on a daily basis. And you know, the last thing a senior developer wants to do is sit around writing SQL queries to pull out a CSV file for some product manager. He's probably a jerk. So it's actually a really good task, I think, for a junior dev. Like learning SQL really strong, really early in your career is a good thing to do, and you should all do it. You can help out with automation, automating of reports and stuff. That's really a way to add a lot of value to an organization while still kind of developing your skills. Writing tests. So I've worked for a bunch of startups, and what happens at startups most of the time is like early on you've got that jerk product manager telling you to get stuff done really fast. Sometimes you don't always get to write tests, and you sit down to a code base that doesn't have the test coverage that it should have, but writing tests is a great way to learn how a project works and how coding works, and it's a good thing to start out doing. Helping with documentation is another way to make yourself valuable and irreplaceable. Okay, frequent code review. Sorry guys, I woke up this morning and I was like, thought I was getting a cold and was like losing my voice, so it's a good thing I'm mic'd up. Frequent code review. Yeah, let's talk about that. This is not what I mean. Who can spot what's bad about this? Yeah, 53 files changed, 25,000 lines. Looks good to me. I'll just tell a quick anecdote about this slide because that's an actual screenshot from an actual pull request that I actually made on a .NET project, and all I did was add a package. And that's what happened. Microsoft. Here's another thing. I don't mean this by frequent code review. So you'll notice we've got a door closed. You've got people trying to understand what's going on. Good code, bad code. This is really bad code review. So now we're going to learn Holdaway's patented process to a good code review. This is going to be really heavy. You guys are going to want to write this down. 2 steps. Number 1, both of you can see the code, and you talk about it. Perfect code review. Yeah, I know. So this is a real picture of a real code review. This was some guys at Podium where I used to work. They had a great setup. Nice comfy couch, stormtrooper, projector, pull up a pull request, go over it line by line. This is your opportunity to talk about the hows and the whys and what's going on. This is your opportunity to tell them, you know, what were you thinking when you wrote this code? And let's maybe talk about how that could be done better, or differently, or worse. If you get silly, I don't know. But it's really important that when you're doing code review, you can both see the code and you can talk about it. It's a great opportunity for teaching. And like continuing down that path, code review goes both ways. So I know it's really tempting to be like, we've got this new developer, we're not going to let him. Well, nobody should be cowboy pushing to master anything, but you might be like, we're going to give this new person more scrutiny than we would other people of our team. So they have to have their pull requests reviewed by like a certain tier of person. You might have some crazy idea about that. But all you senior developers also write some pretty cool code sometimes. You might think you're clever with your one-liners and your metaprogramming. a really good opportunity to show off all of those things that you've learned and all that cool stuff you can do is to ask for a review. Have your junior developer tag them in the pull request, link them the ticket in your issue tracker, whatever you're trying to solve, so that they can say, this is the problem, this is the code that solves it, and look at it side by side. Help them understand what you were thinking when you wrote your crappy code. Just kidding, it's probably good. But then they can start to like understand how to break down problems and approach it, and maybe even they would think after they looked at the ticket, how would I solve that? And then they could compare that to the code. It's a really good opportunity for them. You should give them that opportunity. Pair programming. There's a mouse? Oh, yeah. Should look closer at my slides. Okay, so when we're pair programming, there's a couple of things that can happen that are bad. When you hire a new developer, you're not trying to clone your senior developer. You don't want somebody who looks and thinks and acts the same as other people that are already on your team. You hired them probably for their own skills and talents and for their own background. So you don't want it to become like this echo chamber, like these two guys. You want, push and pull, like both people talking about it and contributing, right? And not have that like circle into who can tell these guys apart. I can't. Second thing, you guys remember that game we played when we were kids called Floor is Lava? Don't touch the keyboard. One of the most frustrating things if you're new to programming or new to a stack or an application or something is to sit down with somebody who knows it really well, who's using a tool or an editor that they know really well and has a bunch of key bindings down, and have them just fly through the project while not saying anything to you while you're supposed to like help them out. So I really believe that like you should have the less experienced person drive, and don't ever like come sit down and be like, here, let me type this out for you. Like if you have to help them, like tell them what to type. Pretend the keyboard is lava. Don't touch it. But you're going to touch it. So if you must, number one, say out loud what you are doing and why. We're going to go over to the routes file now because we need to tell someplace what to do with this request, and then we're going to go to the controller and make sure it's handling properly. Right? Just walk through what you're doing, why you're doing it, if you are driving and also navigating at the same time. When in doubt, start with the why you're doing what you're doing. Really, really important. Okay, plan early and plan often. All right. So it's anecdote time. I have a slide for that, so I can come in front of the podium and tell a story. Okay, so real early in my career, I had this opportunity to work with on a team with two people who were way smarter than me, and that was fun. And one time we sat down to get this like big feature dumped on our plate, and it was like way more complicated and aggressive than anything I'd ever tried to accomplish before. And like our very first step, once we had the requirements for what the feature was going to be, so we like went into a conference room, grabbed a whiteboard and some pens, and like the senior developer I was working with had this really cool like flowchart style of like planning things out. So he's like, okay, here's our object, and this is what it needs to do. It needs to send a message out to this thing and get this data structure that needs to contain these fields, and then it interacts with this other object that's going to need these other things. We like planned it all out on this whiteboard and then like typed it up in this really cool flowchart document, and it just really, really made a lot of sense to me. It was this revelatory experience because I had never approached a problem that complex in that manner before. And it's this, this tool that was used is something that I still refer back to years later. Like sometimes that's the appropriate way to break down a problem. And I'm really glad that we started that feature session by planning in that manner and that I was included in it. Because if I had just like shown up to work that day and snagged a ticket off the backlog, I would have missed all of the thought that went into planning that feature, and I would not know how to break it down in that same way. And like I'd be a worse programmer for having missed that experience. And I think that that's like a real common thing that happens. Like you'll bring in your junior devs, you'll kind of just throw them tickets and not really get them involved in like the greater architecture discussion. You're really doing everybody a disservice. So that's what you end up with. They just have like this little box that they know about and nothing else. So Tenderleft told me that I wasn't allowed to give a talk at a Ruby conference without a cat gif. So. Don't tell him. Okay. So it's really important to get your sailors involved in planning. How else are they ever going to learn about architecture? How are they going to learn how to break down a problem? How are they going to learn how to estimate or define scope? Or any of the other million things you've learned over your years in the field as a senior developer. Like if you just isolate them and keep them in a box, they'll never learn any of these things. And they'll never be as good as they could be. That one kind of speaks for itself. Okay, step 1, bare minimum. If you want to hire a junior developer, he's got to have a mentor. Number 2, you want to curate the tasks with care. And that's a fancy way of saying, like, actually think about the work you're assigning them and try to be deliberate about it where you can. Number 3, frequent code review. This goes both ways. Review their code, give them feedback on it, walk through it with them, talk to them about it, give them the opportunity to review your code, help them understand what you were thinking when you were writing it. That's going to help everyone. Pair programming is a lot of fun. It's a great way to unload information from one brain to another. I would prefer that you have the junior developer drive, but I know you're not all going to do that. So just remember to say out loud what you're doing and why. And then plan early and plan often.
So we have a lot of different community events in Utah. We have the Utah Ruby User Group, we have Slack channels. What are some things that you think we as a community do well when it comes to mentoring some of these newer developers? And what are some things you think that we don't do well and can do better?
Yeah, so I think we're really good at helping out people who are, oh, sorry, yeah. Oh, thanks for the tip. So this is my first time. Got to have a pro helping me out. So the question was, what are some things we do well in our community with junior developers? What are some areas we have to improve? Things we do well. I think we do a really good job of helping out people who are members of our community. Our Slack group is awesome. If anybody's ever posted a question in there, they've probably had multiple answers within minutes. I absolutely love that community, and for those of you that are a part of it, thank you. The one thing that I think we could do a better job at is just outreaching, bringing more people into our community, making them feel welcome, and helping them stick around. Great question. Thanks, Jason.
So you did an anecdote. I'm going to do an anecdote first. I was working with a junior a while ago, and we were pairing on some code. And he looked at a line of code, and he was about to say something like, never mind. And it was like, problem, like, what was that? Like, no, it's not important. Like what? No, not important. Well, you know, you can actually do this in a different way and make it better, like a different command. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, why didn't you tell me that? Why didn't you say that? It's like, well, you're the junior. I'm the junior, you're the senior. You probably know better than I, so I'm not going to tell you what to do. It's like, but I didn't know that. So how do we, this is the question, how do we as a senior developer role encourage our juniors to help the seniors still learn? Because they will feel intimidated, like, oh, I'm not going to tell the senior what to do. What can we do to make them feel comfortable with challenging the code that we've written as seniors and give us tips and pointers?
Man, that's a terrific question. So to sum up, Matt told a story about working with a junior developer. They were doing a code review. The junior developer noticed a line of code that could be improved, but Matt had to prod him in order to get him to speak up to make the suggestion because the junior developer felt kind of intimidated correcting the senior developer or offering just feedback. So the question is, how do we as senior developers make sure our junior developers feel comfortable providing feedback to us? And I think it comes down to just your relationship with the senior and the junior developer. it's really important that when you're offering feedback to your junior developer, you do it in a constructive, friendly way, so that they don't feel stupid when they do something that could be maybe improved or refactored. And then I think that will lead to them being more comfortable providing feedback to you because they haven't felt stupid from you before. And the best way that I've ever seen somebody do this is I used to work with this guy that I would ask questions to all the time. And even if they were like really simple questions, he would never say, the answer is this. He would always say, oh, is it this thing? And he would like ask it as a question as if he was unsure. And that just like really like lowered the intimidation that I felt just by the way he presented the information. And he obviously knew the answer, but he just didn't want me to feel stupid. So I think that as a senior developer, that's needs to be your attitude. Like you want them to learn the new information. You want them to be like not a painful experience for them to receive it. And then hopefully like you can also encourage them to provide that back up the chain too. That's a great question.
Would you agree that ego is an enemy of all programmers, not just juniors? And I can imagine a situation where a junior has a valid point, but ego of the senior programmer, prevents him or her, taking that point into consideration.
Great question. So the question is, would you agree that ego is the enemy of all programmers? And I'd take it one step further, like it's the enemy of all human beings. Like if you think you're better than somebody, you're probably a garbage person and you should leave.
There should be separate mentoring for developer tools. So when senior programmers are playing keyboard is lava, the junior developer also needs to become faster, like using the text editor and such. So should there be like separate mentoring sessions where they come up to speed with all the tools that the team uses?
Man, that's a great idea. What was your name? That was terrific. So the question is, do you think there should be a separate mentoring session where the senior developer can help the junior developer come up to speed with the tools that the team is using and like proficiency with the editor is what was mentioned? And I think that that's a terrific, fantastic, wonderful idea. Like definitely watching somebody who's like really good at Vim makes you want to learn how to Vim. Really, I've never seen anybody who's really good at Emacs. They're all just... I'm not trying to pick a fight. I'm just saying most Emacs people that I know are like trying to build synthesizers and stuff, and they're not really writing code. I'm really not trying to pick a fight. Oh, jeez. Unrelated, okay.
It'll be like 10 versus 3 anyway, so don't worry.
Yeah, you haven't seen what I can do with email. He's actually a video editor too. I totally agree with you about not having the tiers. One thing that I've been for the last, 15, 16 years now is a senior developer.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Sure.
And one thing that I always give as advice to anyone that I'm mentoring, but I think that it's valid for everyone, is the number's kind of arbitrary, but pick 30 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever it is. That's how long you're allowed to be stuck on any one thing. And if you hit that, you have to stop, you have to get up, you have to go away from the keyboard and go do something else completely unrelated. Let your subconscious kind of unwind on that, possibly process on it itself, and then you have to seek help. Sometimes you're just stuck on the wrong keyword, sometimes you're just stuck on the wrong concept, whatever, and someone else will go, oh yeah, you were thinking about blah, 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 and they get you completely back on the right track. It's totally worth it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to restate that. So Ryan Davis just offered a piece of advice that he says he shares with junior developers frequently, and that's make a block of time, 15, 20 minutes, whatever. That's your limit for how long you'll spend being stuck on a problem. And when you hit that limit, stand up, go walk around, do something else for a second, and then seek help. And I would totally love to parrot that advice. I think that's really good, solid advice. sometimes like you get up and walk away from your keyboard and the comma fairies come help you, fix what you're missing and get it straightened out. And a lot of times just a second set of eyes on a set of code is like really valuable and can help you get unstuck. And establishing that pattern and that relationship with your mentor is crucial. It's a great tip.
So I would like to add to that was the newer person that having to learn that myself and nobody having taught that to me, I realized a good percentage of the time it wasn't me. There was something else wonky going on that I couldn't possibly have known, that even the person who was senior to me had to go troubleshoot and figure out and spend some time on. So,
Yeah.
When you find that you spend a whole lot of time doing something you couldn't have possibly figured out on your own, unless you spent hours and hours and hours researching and getting what to do.
Totally. Yeah, Leah just.
Another thing I want to add about, I witnessed Holdaway start
Jeez.
as a junior developer in an organization that hired a whole bunch, and he got a great team with a great mentor, and I got to personally witness the difference between the progress of the people who were mentored in that way and the lack of progress on other teams and what we ended up churning out as developers.
Yeah, that.
All this from the person who mentored him?
No, actually, it's like us paying attention together. No. He's only learned something and he goes and teaches.
Who's the real mentor? Eric. Yo.
Just
Oh,
to
sorry.
piggyback a little bit on that. In the place that I work, I inherited the project and there was no domain knowledge about the project at all. There was nobody that could function as a mentor there. And I just want to say that the people who mentor me are the people on Slack and URUG, and I probably overuse them, but you guys are an indispensable resource for someone in that position. And if you're in that position, I'd encourage you to reach out, as you already said. But to reiterate that, to reach out and ask for help. I walk into the room, I always feel like the stupidest guy in the room, but you guys definitely carry me along.
Great tip. Thanks, Alan.
It's good to be worse than the man.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. We've got two. Let's go here and then here. Okay.
So I've hired quite a few junior developers. The first one I hired was this guy named Jeff, who our CFO is kind of a douchebag, and every time he would see Jeff on Facebook or something he shouldn't have been doing, he'd let me know about it, and wanted me to get rid of him multiple times. And I held on to him. I thought, I got to hang on to this guy. I coached him away from that, and Jeff is like, he did what we put him on those like impossible hard things that people didn't know, not impossible things that were kind of a nuisance, and he became the guy.
Yeah.
Now it became a joke where it's like we can't fire Jeff, and so every other week someone comes in and says, "Hey, Jeff, we make a joke about firing Jeff." Well, now I guess we have to fire Jeff now, but we can never let go of this guy because he's freaking awesome.
Yeah. So you just basically said that what I said earlier in my talk was true.
Exactly.
Well, I just wanted to add a point that sometimes you have to protect your juniors. I'm going to call them juniors. Your new hires. You have to protect them because sometimes they'll behave in ways that are not consistent with other people, how they think they should behave.
Sure.
And if you don't protect them, bad things happen.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something I hadn't considered. Basically, we also need to sometimes shield our new hires and our new developers from business people who may not understand what's going on.
Also, if you want to see Jeff, jeffyoufired.com is.
Yep, jeffyoufired.com. The domain starts. Thank you.
My goodness. That's a terrible thing to joke about.
Well, mine's kind of just an extension of what everyone's been saying, but I am the newbie.
Okay.
And I find that half the time, if I have a question about something, literally just having my mentor right there for me to soundboard off of, sometimes they don't even have to say anything, and I realized the information was in my head,
Yeah.
but I was stuck in like a loop,
Yeah.
like where I just was stuck on this one thing and like this, and my mentor just literally has to be standing there, and I'm like, so I did this, and then I did this, and then, oh, never mind, go ahead. And it's like, I already know it, but like just having someone there.
Yeah.
There's a term
That I
for
know I
that,
can
it's
ask.
called rubber ducky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you just have a rubber duck next to your laptop, you can talk to it if you mentor it.
I
Yeah.
like an actual person.
I talk to myself while I code all the time, and that's good. Okay, a couple more. Let's go, Braden, and then up here. We're out of time? Okay, we're at, okay, one more. Okay, you guys want to rock, paper, scissors for, who's got the better question?
I want to know, like, what are the best ways you found to accept criticism or instruction from someone?
Yeah, so that's a great question. What are the best ways to accept criticism from someone? Number one, like, a comment on the quality of your code is not a comment on the quality of your character. Like, yeah, clap it up for that. I am, like, there's this kind of joke, but I kind of feel it sometimes, where I think that any code that wasn't written by me personally in the last 3 weeks is total garbage. And like, I'll sit down at a project I've been working on for a while, and you'd be like, what is this garbage code? And then you do the git blame, and then you really quick close the window so nobody sees that it's your name. But like, the reality is you'll know more tomorrow than you knew today. So there's like absolutely no shame in, you know, having things to learn or things to know. And if you ever get to the point where you feel like you do know everything, like, you need to find something else to do, because that would be real boring. So just like, don't take it personally, it's just code. All right, and I think that's it. Thanks, everybody.